especially for Halloween, Teddington Theatre Club presents Black and White. Read by Susan Gerlach.
It's the eyes. Cold, sharp. Hannah has been looking through hundreds of photographs from the University Archives and the Historical Society in Jackson Hole. The earliest pictures are of Yellowstone, taken by William Henry Jackson in the 1870s, with a wet glass negative and a running stream to wash the plates. There are hunters with their trophies and dudes from back east captured by Ben Sheffield on a camera fitted with a gun stock, so he could just take aim and fire. She sifts through photos of farmers and family life, fairground tintypes, grainy images in sepia and black and white. Her job is to color the photos. She has a magnifying glass to find the essence of life in each picture, the spark in the eye, the sway of a hip. She peers at the people caught in the magnesium glare of the photographer's flash, eyes like catfish on a hook, straight-backed, awkward, wearing their skin like a badly fitting suit. She sees them, but this girl sees her. The girl is stretched out on a stagecoach, something almost languorous in the positioning of her body. She is nestled under a pile of blankets. Dark hair, twirled into ringlets, crowns her face, brushing along her neck and down to the top of her right shoulder. The ribbon tying it to one side has come undone. One arm is angled out of the covers, as if summoning someone. The sleeve of her dress refined, silk maybe. She looks closer through the glass at the girl's hands. Not workers' hands. One foot sticks out. The boot is solid, new leather. The coach is bedded into deep snowdrifts. The water in the creek is frozen, and a dead horse lies in the traces. Who are you? Hannah turns the photo over. A name and a place have been annotated in faded ink. Miss Silence Blakey, High Pass City, Wyoming. Hannah pulls a wrap across her shoulders. The radiator is on, but the old DeWitt apartments downtown are notoriously cold. Still, it feels colder than usual, and her joints ache. A chill steals into her body. She rubs her hands together and blows on them, but there's no warmth in her breath. "You're paying for the location," the agent had said. "And these are historic properties, so some of the plumbing is historic." "Are they quiet?" "Oh, yes. Dubois is real quiet." So Hannah had moved in that weekend with 2 trunks of books and clothes and her laptop, all in the back of her old Honda. Everything she owned in one small car. The doorbell goes. Hannah waits for the delivery boy to clear the lobby. She brings in her groceries, then washes her hands, scrubbing hard with the soap, in between the fingers and across the back of her hands. She catches herself in the mirror, looks closely, her hand gripping the edge of the sink, the knuckles white. Who are you? She sees a thin girl, late 20s, blue-green eyes. She's wearing jeans, not stonewashed, just old, and a thrift store cardigan 2 sizes too big, the graying wool pilling and bobbling, her hands balled into fists, seeking the safety of the saggy pockets. She has the sort of fine red hair that goes prematurely white. Her mother's hair had gone white by the time she was 30, and she had insisted on dyeing it red till 6 months before she died. Skin pale, eyes almost colorless, her mother had clung on to the red hair dye as everything else in her life had bleached to monochrome. Hannah had watched her mother slowly fade, and it had felt to her like the life was draining out of her along with the color. When her mother died, Hannah blew most of her savings on a scarlet coffin and red roses. Hannah had started working on the photographs when her mother first got sick. She could work from home. All she needed was her laptop, Photoshop, and Skype. It meant she could nurse her mother. She stopped going out. "We've got each other," her mother would say. And Hannah would take her mother's hands gently in her own, A little squeeze to say, "I love you," to say, "Don't leave me," and all the other things she couldn't say out loud. And her mother would squeeze back. Hannah knows she is good at her job. She takes time. She researches every detail. The 20 shades of pink, yellow, green, and blue that make up human skin. The typical dyes used in Shoshone blankets. The precise dark blue of U.S. Army uniforms from the Indian Wars. All of this she can discover via a network of specialists and historians online. Memoirs, diaries, old advertisements, paintings, government records, all can be accessed, cross-referenced, layering up detail on detail, until she alone can see the whole picture, really see it. Most people don't. She picks up the print of Miss Silence Blakey and looks at it closely, maps it inch by inch. She opens up the image on her laptop and switches on the monitor so she can view it on a larger screen. The image flickers like a pulse as it jumps from screen to screen, like 2 frames of an animation that the eye doesn't quite register. She blinks, looks again. Nothing. She starts by smoothing out the scratches, the flaws, the modeling and stippling of time, damage done by years of sunlight, humidity, dust, the oil on fingertips. It is these imperfections that tell you what has happened to a print, where it has been kept, how many hands it has passed through. She increases the resolution and creates a new layer. But now the image on her screen will start to diverge from the print. She will build up the color in layer masks on top. The years will drop away until it looks fresh, newly captured. She works slowly, her knuckles swollen and aching in the cold. She was supposed to be going in for a team meeting, but she has cried off. "I can Zoom you," suggests her supervisor, Carrie. She is new. They haven't met. "No need," Hannah types back. "Just send me an email." She pauses. It feels like something more is called for. "Love, Hannah? Yours sincerely? Best regards?" Kiss or not kiss? Kiss, kiss? No. "Thanks, Hannah. That'll do." Her phone pings. A text. This throws Hannah. No one texts her. "You might want to check this website out." Carrie prefers text to email. "It has digitized copies of newspaper archives, the Sweetwater Times. That was for High Pass City," she types. "Ciao. Kiss, kiss." Ciao. Carrie isn't even Italian. "Thanks," she types back. No kiss. She opens up the newspaper archives on the other screen. High Pass City was about 35 miles across the Wind River Mountains southwest from Lander and a good couple of hours' drive from Dubois. Lying in a ravine between 2 peaks, it had been a staging post on the Oregon Trail, used by trappers, traders, and government surveymen going down to the Green River Rendezvous, pack animals loaded up with goods to exchange for furs. It was a pepperweed of a town, but its roots ran far and deep, roots of quartz, silver, and gold in the hills behind, and in the various tributaries and creeks spawned by the Sweetwater River. Each discovery brought its own flotsam of prospectors, homesteaders, and hangers-on, and the town would flower for 5 or 10 years at a time before dying back until the next time. The hills around it are riddled with mines. Carrie Shields, Lucy Boy, Jeanette, named for wives and sweethearts, or for reasons long since lost to anyone but the miners themselves. The Irish Jew mine, Desperacida, and the Forlorn Hope. Warring newspapers variously boasted that it was one of the golden cities of the West, a Sodom of hook joints and saloon shootouts, or a godforsaken huddle of rubble-stone houses where the tumbleweeds outnumbered the inhabitants. When the gold ran out and the mining investors started suing each other, the townfolk gradually moved back to Lander, driven out by the long, cold winters, and by the late 1940s, it was pretty much abandoned. She sifts through a couple of photos in the archives. A view from 1875. Snow-blanketed bare hills. A broken water wheel. Buildings abandoned after the surface gold ran out. Main Street, 1906. A long, wide dirt road running east-west. The Carissima Mine, the mother of all the mines in High Pass City, looming above, abandoned, circa 1950. The image blurs. Hannah stretches out and looks up, blinking to give her dry eyes a rest. She takes a pocket mirror out to help her put in eye drops. She sees her reflection. Something is caught in her hair, a white thread. She pulls at it absent-mindedly, a sharp twinge of unexpected pain. Her first white hair. Hannah resumes work on the first layers in the photo. She starts with the snow. White is the color the eye perceives when confronted with all visible wavelengths of light. It is both no color at all and every color at once. But nothing is ever pure white. She remembers sitting cross-legged on the floor, watching her mother paint, deftly juggling different size brushes, sticking out at angles from between her fingers. For snow, her mother would use titanium white, with a little phthalo blue, penciled in with a thin sable. Then a touch of permanent rose, as the crystals reflect the sun's light. More phthalo blue and burnt umber, smeared on with a palette knife, created the shadows. Hannah would watch her mother closely, seeing how the canvas came to life, how the colors emerged, how they changed in her eyes as the harsh brightness of the afternoon sun through the window gave way to the soft early evening light. When they were done, while her mother set about making dinner, she would clean the brushes, dunking them in jars filled with linseed oil and working Murphy's oil soap into the bristles with her fingers to shift the caked-on paint, holding them under the tap and watching the colors dilute to clear under the running water. But the illness had taken her mother's hands. Her movement slower, a tremor that insinuated itself into her work, a painful stiffening of the joints that had contracted her hands into swollen claws. Hannah had got rid of it all. Easels, brushes, old paintings. Except for one canvas. The last one. A snowscape. Unfinished. It leans against the back wall of the apartment, covered in thick brown paper and tied up with twine, waiting for Hannah to finish it. Painting doesn't put food on the table, her mother had said. You need to do something with computers. That's where the money is. Hannah moves on to the trees. Lodgepole pine, firs and spruce. She can see whitebark pine, too, a relic of the Ice Age, growing twisted and gnarled against the stark landscape. Gray trunks, purplish cones, bruised and battered by the snow and icy winds, but clinging on for 1,000 years or more. Then she tackles the coach. She colors the deep oak of the running gear and frame, then the large rear wheels and smaller front wheels of white ash, metal, and leather. She uses a lasso and pen to pick out each layer in the image on her screen, filling it with color, adjusting hue, saturation, reducing the opacity in search of a more natural tone. Where is the light source? How to show the light bouncing up from the snow? The trees appear to be bending, so there is wind, and the branches create small, fleeting shadows that need to be captured in that one moment. As she builds up the layers, she can almost feel the coach bucking, as if eager to take off, to escape. A sudden gust of wind blows a flood of papers, prints, and stationery from her desk. She breaks off, getting down onto the floor, her knees stiff, massaging the joints of her fingers, struggling to pick up paper clips and staples. It is 9:30, and she hasn't eaten. She goes to close the window. But the window is closed. Hannah sees the figure of a woman approaching her bed. At first, she can't make out who it is, but there is something familiar. A tilt of the head, curled hands, white hair. "Mom?" "Finally," the figure replies. Hannah reaches out, an overwhelming longing, mixed with guilt. But as Hannah reaches to take her in her arms, the tears falling like hot fat upon her cheeks, the figure melts away. It's 4:40 a.m. She is alone. It had happened so quickly. Her mother had picked up a bug and was sick in the night. Hannah held the washing-up bowl for her in one hand, the other hand holding her mother's white hair out of the way. By the morning, her mother was weak, her heart racing, and Hannah had called an ambulance. Hannah had packed up a few things and waved her off, saying she would follow on as soon as she could. Her mother had had a dozen or so minor crises like this before. Hannah even stopped to have some breakfast. You never know how long you're going to be waiting, and it's not always easy to pick up something to eat at the hospital. She had barely sat down in the waiting room when one of the doctors came straight over. He ushered her into a side room and started talking about her mother's case. Looking at her notes, the doctor said, "Your mother's motor and non-motor symptoms have been deteriorating, which suggests a decreasing response to the medication, with significant comorbidities in her case. The ongoing dysphagia, that means difficulty swallowing." "I know what it means," Hannah said. The doctor paused for a second, then picked up where he had left off. "Has led to aspiration, pneumonia, and sepsis. We are giving her antibiotics, but we don't know whether she will continue to be able to breathe unaided, and she is too old for ventilation." Hannah blinked, trying to take it all in. Then the doctor talked about clinically assisted nutrition. Did Hannah know if her mother's insurance would cover that? The doctor spoke in a rapid-fire monotone like a machine gun firing out. "Do you have a power of attorney? Does Mrs. Cordingley have an end-of-life plan, a do-not-resuscitate order?" "No. No. No." But Hannah was spared having to make a decision. The God decision. By the time they reached her cubicle, her mother had gone. She lay in the bed, with her mouth open, in her hospital gown, still stained with vomit. Hannah took her mother's hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. But there had been no answering squeeze. Hannah sits up in bed, still shaking. She goes for a glass of water, takes some Tylenol, and opens up her computer on the kitchen table. No point trying to get back to sleep now. Carrie has sent her census records and assorted correspondence from the mining office. From the correspondence, she is able to piece together some family history. Henry Blakey, Silence's grandfather, had come over from Yorkshire in the 1840s as a mining engineer, originally settling in New Jersey. He hitched a ride west with the Mormons of the John R. Murdoch Company in 1861, but when gold was discovered in the Carissima Gulch, Henry found he had a greater desire for gold than Zion and settled in High Pass City. By 1875, the first boom had bust, but the Blakeys had invested wisely. Every bankrupt prospector sold to the Blakeys and got just enough for their worldly goods to get out of town on the next stagecoach. The Blakeys owned the hotel, the store, and one of the saloons. They mined the richest seam of all, people. For the next 20 years, the fortunes of the townsfolk waxed and waned, and the Blakeys took $1 off each and every one of them. But Silence Blakey disappeared. She was there in the census for 1880, but not in 1890. So did you move away? Did you get married? He must have been quite a catch. For a second, she senses a needle-sharp, white-hot stab of anger. She feels the emotion deep inside her. From the image on her screen, Silence Blakey's eyes glint with fury. Hannah's head jolts upwards, a pulse of intense pain, the blue light rays from her screen searing into her eyes. Hannah waits until 10 a.m. before knocking on Walter's door. He plays jazz guitar in his Sunday suit across the various bars downtown most evenings, so best not to knock before then. He is not the official janitor, but he has been with the DeWitt family for years and acts as unofficial building super in exchange for a flexible deal on his rent. Walter shuffles around her apartment with a rusty hammer, occasionally banging pipework and listening intently. "I have a good ear," he says proudly. He may have a good ear, but he has no tools. He provides her with the benefit of his professional opinion. "Sure is cold," and ultimately admits defeat. "Thank you," says Hannah. He should go now. But he doesn't. He seems in no hurry to leave. "These your folks?" he asks, pointing to a photo. A red-haired woman in a polka-dot dress, balances a small child on one hip. A man's arm can be seen reaching from behind the picture frame, round the woman's waist, but the rest of him has been cropped out. The photo is yellow-spotted with age, faded as if seen half squinting in the harsh glare of the late afternoon sun. "Yes," she says. She starts toward the door. He looks at her in a way that seems to see right down inside her. As he turns to go, he catches sight of the image on her laptop. He shudders. That's a whole bunch of evil. At the doorway, he hesitates. "You need to get out, girl. You're just a bird in a cage." After he is gone, Hannah pulls on a hoodie. She opens her front door slowly. The corridor is empty. Peeling magnolia walls give way to a dirty rust-brown linoleum floor, a pile of unopened junk mail and the usual real estate magazines and takeout menus. She stands on the threshold. She knows with absolute certainty that there is nothing out there for her. Her throat is parched. She swallows, breathless as if the air is too thin here, waiting for the buzzing in her ears to subside. Then Mrs. Fernandez's 2 boys come barreling up the stairs. The elevator is broken again. They are hooting and shouting, play-fighting like 2 wolf cubs. "Hola, Beulah," the eldest shouts, pointing and laughing. "Grandma?" Hannah catches sight of her face in the splintered panes of the elevator window. A broad shock of white hair now wilts across her forehead. Retreating inside, she stops to get her breath back and goes back to her laptop. That's when she hears it. A sharp exhalation of breath. Silence Blakey looks up at her. Her mouth is half open. Her breath hangs like candy floss in the freezing air. Hannah starts work on the blankets and the girls' clothes, mixing shades of violet and cyan. She works furiously without break. The sleeve of the girl's dress is cobalt blue, her ribbons terracotta with gold edging. Hannah looks out the window at the world outside. As the daylight fades, the street lights come on. The fluorescent yellow strip lights of the thrift store snap off as Mrs. Constanzo closes up for the day. The neon red sign on top of the DeWitt Mall opposite illuminates, and she can see it reflecting in the puddles of rain, inky black, on the sidewalk. Murray's bar opens up, and she can hear Walter tuning up his guitar. Murray whistles to himself as he unstacks tables and stools. The cold has become so intense that she feels shivery, drowsy, her body heavy and bloated. She looks at her apartment through new eyes. The Lazy Boy mustard rocking chair, the Bakelite wireless, glass figurines of a beaming Chinese man and his wife, lying down on their stomachs, side by side, resting on their elbows, their feet playful in the air behind them. Her mother had picked the figurines up for her first wedding anniversary from a trip to Chinatown, and when they moved into the apartment, she had set them in pride of place on the mantelpiece, above where the old gas fire had been. Hannah suddenly realizes there's hardly anything in her apartment that she has chosen. No memento, souvenir, or record of her own time on this earth. She feels invisible. Silence Blakey was never invisible. Silence looked back at her from her laptop screen, her clothes new bright, warmth in her skin. Her mouth hungry. The sound of something smashing makes her jump. One of the Chinese figures has tumbled and shattered on the cracked tiles below. A vicious laughter rings in her ears. She grabs a dish towel and jumps down to clear up the fragments, kneeling on a shard of broken glass in her haste. Her blood seeps into the cracks in the tiles. Iron red, carmine. She eats beans from a can, makes coffee, warming her fingers on the outside of the mug. She is drinking it black as the milk has frozen in the carton. She swept up the figurine and threw it in the wastebasket. Her mother had got rid of everything that spoke of her father, his clothes, his tools, but she had kept the 2 Chinese dolls. Hannah holds the remaining doll in her hand. There is a space, a curvature, like a safe harbor, where the other doll is meant to fit. The man it was supposed to represent left so long ago she cannot really remember him. But from what little her mother had said, this man had been no safe harbor. Then she throws this figurine in the wastebasket too. Hannah picks up the last of her mother's paintings, the one left unfinished when her hands would no longer serve her. Hannah takes a pair of scissors and carefully cuts the twine and starts to peel the paper gently off the frame. She turns it over. A fine dust of paint falls off the canvas where it has cracked in the cold. There is a brown-black patch of mold. What once was white has darkened to a gloomy, dirty gray. Hannah can't look at it. She starts to shake. She grabs the scissors and hacks at the canvas, stabbing the blade through the layers of varnish, paint, and cloth, wrenching it off its frame until all that's left is a gaping hole where a picture should be. She rocks back and forth, her mouth open as if to scream, but no sound comes out. She retreats to her laptop in the Sweetwater Times. What happened between 1880 and 1890? Where did you go? The ongoing saga of the Carissima mine and its warring investors takes up most space, quieting the pounding in her head. Then boundary disputes, liquor license applications, and the weekly roundup of drunk and disorderly. All depict the ebb and flow of small-town life. The busiest people in the Wild West were not cowboys, but lawyers. Then she sees it, her picture, Silence Blakey staring back at her from the stagecoach. The headline reads, October 13th, 1883, Miss Silence Blakey, frozen to death on the stage to Salt Lake City. Rescuers there, too late. Hannah reads on. Miss Silence Blakey, age 17, youngest daughter of Lionel and Maggie Blakey, granddaughter of Henry Blakey, a prominent businessman of High Pass City, took the stagecoach to school in Salt Lake City. The stagecoach got caught in an unexpected snowstorm of terrifying violence. With the wheels stuck in the snow, the horse lamed, the driver covered Miss Blakey in every blanket and rug he could find in a desperate attempt to keep her warm, and set off back to High Pass City to get help. The townsfolk rallied round valiantly, led by Mr. Lionel Blakey himself. But the blizzard raged on, and it was 2 whole days before the search party could reach her. Too late. Miss Silence Blakey froze to death where she lay. Hannah looks at the newspaper photo. She can hear the wind howling, the trees groaning and snapping, the leather straps of the coach keening and screaming in the storm. Hannah is filled with such grief that it weighs on her shoulders like a pall. Grief for this girl she never knew, for her mother, for her own grayscale life. But this grief is beyond tears. A profound loneliness. It strips away hope, any thought of the future, leaving her raw. Hannah knows now that she has to finish this picture, an urgency rising in her throat that makes her want to gag. She opens up the image she has been working on. She has just the hair and the eyes left to do. She will give Miss Silence Blakey flame-red hair, the color of ochre and cochineal, of victory and courage. She builds up the red in her image, blending in cinnabar and kermes, increasing saturation and intensity. She can feel life returning to her picture, a lightning jolt of blood pumping through frozen veins, the beating of an icy heart. I want to live. A voice. Did she hear it? Did she imagine it? Hannah freezes. She listens. It's after midnight. There are no street sounds. Everything is quiet. Hannah looks back at the image on her laptop. The eyes of silence bore into hers, merciless. And Hannah understands that she has closed a door, barring escape. She looks round in rising panic. The gouged painting stares back at her, its torn mouth wide open. So do I, Hannah cries. The eyes aren't done yet. Don't do the eyes. She can feel her hands being pulled toward the laptop. Hannah resists, a deep yearning for the life she hasn't lived, the life she has denied herself. Summoning everything she has, she sends the image as it is to carry with the words, "Help me!" Carrie has forwarded the images to Sarah Teal, the archivist from Laramie. They are going through the images together with a book in mind. Hannah's image came through overnight, and what with everything being so busy in the office this morning, Carrie just forwarded it straight on to Sarah. The door swishes open, and a girl with bright red hair curling down one side of her face enters, confident behind dark glasses. "Name, please?" asked Carrie's secretary. "Hannah Cordingley." Everyone in the office stops, turns round and gawps. It is like the classic movie entrance of a stranger into a Wild West saloon. No one in the office has seen Hannah Cordingley. She is a recluse, a name at the end of a short email. An in-joke. Hannah says she has come for her money. She has to quit her job. "Cash, please." Carrie sends a girl to the bank. She tries to strike up a conversation with Hannah, but gets nothing in return. "I love your hair. Great color," Carrie offers. Carrie watches as Hannah glances sideways at her reflection in the mirror. Hannah seems taken with her appearance, too. When the girl comes back from the bank, Hannah takes her money and goes. She doesn't say goodbye. Sarah is flicking through the colorized photographs, tagging those she might like to use. Then she stops. "Oh, my Lord, I can't use this." "Which one?" asks Carrie. "The girl on the stagecoach." "Why ever not?" "Look," Sarah says. "Let me see." On the screen, Carrie sees a stagecoach trapped in the snow, a dead horse, and in the coach, a petrified woman with white hair, blue-green eyes wide with pure terror, her face contorted in a scream. In the cafe opposite, the woman with bright red hair nurses a large black coffee, reading a paper from the display rack from behind her dark glasses. She stretches out her hands languorously, relishing the movement, like a cat stretching out her claws. At the table next to her, a harassed mother with a mocha with extra cream is talking on her cell phone while her 2 children run wild. The boy stops and stares at the woman. "Timmy, hon, don't do that," whines his mother, carrying on with her phone call. But Timmy stays rooted to the spot. "Timmy, come away," says his mother again. He carries on, staring. The woman with red hair raises her glasses with one hand and stares back. Hard. Timmy starts squealing at the top of his lungs. "Oh, my Lord, Timmy's just gone off on one. I'll call you back," says his mother. She drains her mocha in one big gulp, sweeps up her stuff and both kids. "That lady, her eyes are all wrong!" Timmy is now hyperventilating his way to a complete meltdown. His mother is shushing him, trying to yank him towards the door of the cafe to get the hell out of there without further embarrassment. Both kids are crying now. But Timmy won't be quiet. He keeps screaming about the scary lady's eyes. People in the cafe are tutting or pretending to look away. The mother is apologizing whilst simultaneously trying to haul Timmy bodily off the premises. The woman with red hair is enjoying this. She runs her tongue along the edge of her teeth, her mouth forming into a subtle smile. As Timmy's mother finally manages to propel him towards the door, Timmy yells, "They're like those pictures!" He points at the newspapers. No color. Black and white.
That was Black and White, written by Caroline Tajasque and read by Susan Gerlach. It was a Teddington Theatre Club production. If you enjoyed it and you'd like to support the work of our theatre-loving volunteers, please go to teddingtontheatreclub.org.uk and click Donate.